Althea Kincaid wasn't your typical engineer. Sure, she had the requisite grease stains on her overalls and a perpetual scowl that could curdle milk, but her mind? Sharper than the edge of a vibro blade. And today, that brain of hers was screaming like a toddler denied candy at a checkout line. The teleportation hub, thrumming like the bastard child of a nightclub and a migraine, was her pride and joy. For most, it was a marvel of engineering. For Althea, it was a constant reminder that the universe really hated her. Damn it, Althea, came a familiar voice, nasal and unbearably whiny. We've got another scramble on Bay 4. Althea turned, squinting through the perpetual dimness of the control room at Prentice, her hapless assistant, who had the unfortunate habit of looking like he'd just smelled something rotten. Bay 4, huh? Althea smirked, adjusting her oil-streaked cap. My favorite. Bay 4 was notorious. If the teleportation hub were a human body, Bay 4 would be the appendix, useless, prone to rupture, and best removed completely. You think it's a glitch in the system or something? Worse? Prentice asked, wringing his hands like he was trying to strangle an invisible chicken. Worse? Althea shot him a look. Prentice, if you say it's space gremlins again, I swear I'll shove you into the recycler. Right, he muttered, ducking his head. Althea marched toward the chaotic bay, her boots clanging against the metal floor, a sound that was oddly comforting in its consistency. The doors slid open with their customary reluctance, revealing the shimmering portal, pulsing with a light that should have been blue but was now an alarming shade of puke green. Well, isn't that just peachy, she muttered, tapping at the console with fingers that knew their job too well. All right, you stubborn piece of junk, talk to mama. The console spat out data like a cat coughing up a hairball, the numbers and graphs painting a picture of sheer madness. The readings are all over the place, Prentice said, peering over her shoulder with all the grace of a gawking tourist. Yeah, no shit, Althea shot back. They're more tangled than your love life. Prentice opened his mouth to retort, but wisely shut it when Althea glared at him. All right. Let's try resetting the dimensional stabilizers before this thing decides it wants to open a gate to the void, she decided, fingers dancing over the panel. Prentice watched, clearly impressed by her ability to make magic happen with a few key strokes. You sure that'll work? It's either that or we wait for the universe to implode, she said, shrugging. Your call. As Althea worked, the portal flickered and whined, like a petulant child resisting bedtime. Slowly, the sickly green hue faded, replaced by the more familiar blue. There we go, Althea said, brushing her hands together like she'd just finished a particularly satisfying meal. Piece of cake. It's still making that weird humming noise, Prentice pointed out, ever the optimist. That? Althea smirked. That's just it singing for its supper. Meanwhile, far beyond the confines of the teleportation hub, Earth had been unwillingly chosen for a cosmic showdown. Sentient planets. Yeah, you heard that right, planets with a penchant for petty grudges, were about to throw down like it was intergalactic WrestleMania. But for the blissfully ignorant humans, it was just another Tuesday. You know, Althea, Prentice began, leaning against the console, I heard a rumor. Oh, this should be good, she replied, not looking up from her work. They say Earth might be, you know, a battleground for ancient cosmic forces. Althea chuckled, a sound that was more bark than laugh. Right, and I'm the queen of Neptune. Prentice shrugged. Could be true. And pigs might fly, she retorted, rolling her eyes. Look, Prentice, if the universe wants to use Earth as a boxing ring, there's not a damn thing we can do about it. So you believe it then? He asked, a hint of hope in his voice. Althea sighed, a sound that carried the weight of too many late-night shifts and too little coffee. I believe that people love a good story. And nothing sells better than impending doom. Their conversation was cut short by a loud clang, followed by a shudder that ran through the entire station. What the hell was that? Prentice yelped, eyes wide as saucers. I don't know, but I have a feeling we're about to find out, Althea said, already moving toward the source of the disturbance. They arrived at the scene of the chaos, a storage bay that looked like a tornado had rejected it in disgust. Crates were scattered like a giant had thrown a tantrum, and a single, ominous-looking cylinder lay at the center of the mess, gently humming with an aura of menace. Well, that's new, Althea said, cautiously approaching the cylinder. Should we, call for help? Prentice suggested, backing away. And tell them what? That we've got a rogue cylinder that looks like it wants to eat us? She shot back, inspecting the object with a wary eye. Before Prentice could respond, a faint voice echoed from the cylinder. Help! Did you hear that? Prentice whispered, clutching at his collar like it might save him. Yeah, I heard it, Althea replied, disbelief thick in her tone. And I'm pretty sure we've just stumbled on something way above our pay grade. What now? Prentice asked, looking to her for guidance. Now? Althea considered the situation, a devilish grin spreading across her face. Now we see just how deep this rabbit hole goes. As they leaned in closer, the cylinder's surface shimmered, revealing a holographic interface that projected a garbled face. It was like someone had tried to make a Picasso out of pixels. Need assistance. System error. Communications failing. Sounds like my ex, Althea quipped, her fingers already working to stabilize the signal. Prentice snorted, despite himself. Think it's linked to the anomaly in Bay 4? If it is, we're in for one hell of a ride, she replied, tapping a sequence into her wristpad. The face on the cylinder sharpened, revealing a humanoid visage with eyes the size of dinner plates. Greetings, Earth entities, it croaked, voice crackling like a radio on the fritz. This unit requires immediate evacuation. Althea exchanged a glance with Prentice. Evacuation, huh? And where exactly are you planning on going? The figure blinked, like it hadn't considered that. Situation critical. This planet is marked for conflict. Conflict? You mean like an interstellar bar brawl, or should we be expecting nukes? Althea asked, her tone dripping with mockery. Affirmative, the figure replied, missing the sarcasm completely. High probability of planetary-scale damage. Prentice paled, which was impressive considering he was already the color of old milk. We gotta warn someone. And say what? That a talking cylinder says the world's ending? Althea snapped. We'd be laughed out of the station. But what if it's true? He pressed, desperation edging his voice. Althea paused, considering the possibility. If the universe was indeed setting its sights on Earth, they had a front-row seat to the chaos that was sure to follow. All right, she said finally, rubbing her temples. Let's see what else this bucket of bolts can tell us. The hologram flickered, the face now showing signs of strain. Time is limited. Opposition forces detected. Opposition? Prentice echoed. Like, the bad guys? Correct, the figure intoned. Hostile entities approaching. Great, Althea muttered. Just what I needed. First it's the teleportation hub trying to kill us, now it's space invaders. The cylinder emitted a low tone, like a groan from a particularly disgruntled ghost. Urgency required. You must act. You heard the bot, Althea said, turning to Prentice. Let's get this thing up and running. He nodded, for once not arguing with her. What about the rest of the station? Let them deal with it. We're engineers, not bloody diplomats, she replied, already plotting their next move. As they worked to stabilize the cylinder's systems, the station shuddered again, more violently this time, as if the universe was giving them a not-so-gentle reminder of its impending tantrum. You think anyone's gonna believe us? Prentice asked, his voice tight with worry. Depends, Althea said, lips curling into a half-smile. Do we really care if they do? The cylinder hummed contentedly as they finished their adjustments. The face on the hologram seemed to relax, if such a thing was possible for a computer-generated visage. Thank you, Earth entities, it said, voice now smoother. Your assistance is appreciated. Yeah, Althea waved it off. Just don't forget to send us a postcard. The hologram flickered out, leaving them in silence save for the station's ambient hum and the distant echoes of chaos. So what now? Prentice asked, a hint of determination in his tone. Althea looked out at the vastness beyond the station walls, a galaxy full of possibilities and pitfalls. Now, Prentice, we watch the universe unfold. And maybe, just maybe, we survive it. As they made their way back to the control room, Althea couldn't help but chuckle to herself. Earth, a battleground for sentient planets. Who would have thought? Then again, it's always the quiet ones you have to watch out for. And Earth? Well, it was about to become the loudest kid on the block. Althea Kincaid knew that life was a series of disasters held together by duct tape and caffeine, and today was no exception. She trudged back to the teleportation hub, the hum of malfunctioning machinery a familiar symphony of impending doom. The station might as well have been held together with stubbornness and a prayer, and neither seemed to be working too well lately. Prentice followed, looking like a man who'd just realized he was wearing two different shoes. So, just another day, huh? Yep, another day in paradise, Althea replied, rolling her eyes as she surveyed the chaos around them. The teleportation hub was a buzzing hive of activity, or more accurately, a buzzing hive of screw-ups waiting to happen. Bay 4 was its usual charming self, threatening to implode or explode or maybe both at the same time. A few other engineers were already on site, poking at various consoles with the enthusiasm of someone forced to play a game they hated. Among them was Talcon, the enigmatic alien who had joined their team a few months back. Talcon looked like someone had tried to build a human out of mismatched parts, his skin a swirling mix of blues and greens that shifted like an oil spill. He was as inscrutable as a tax return but a damn sight more useful. "Ah, Talcon," Althea greeted, clapping him on the shoulder. "How's the universe treating you today?" Talcon turned his gaze on her, a slow blink that indicated he was probably contemplating her question with the seriousness of a philosopher. "The universe is a chaotic system with no inherent meaning," he finally replied, his voice as smooth as a well-oiled vibro blade. "So, great then," Althea said, smirking as Prentice snorted behind her. "What's the situation?" Talcon asked, seemingly immune to sarcasm. "Same as usual. Bay 4's throwing a fit, and we've got a talking cylinder that says Earth's about to become ground zero for a cosmic cockfight," Althea explained, her tone as dry as the station's instant coffee. "Fascinating," Talcon said, though his expression remained neutral. "We should prioritize diagnostics to prevent any catastrophic failures." "Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Don't want to miss out on the fireworks because the hub decided to take a nap," Althea replied, already moving toward the primary control panel. Prentice shuffled after her, casting wary glances at the various blinking lights that decorated the room like a Christmas tree on the fritz. "Do you think we can fix it?" "Define fix," Althea said, raising an eyebrow. "If you mean, make it not kill us, then maybe." "Reassuring," Prentice muttered, fiddling with his wrist pad. Althea rolled up her sleeves, fingers dancing over the console with practiced ease. She coaxed the system to life, the screen displaying a mess of data that would make even a seasoned analyst weep. "Looks like there's some kind of interference screwing with the dimensional stabilizers," she said, biting her lip in concentration. "Could be linked to the cosmic shenanigans." "Well, that's a cheerful thought," Prentice replied, leaning closer to peer at the screen. "Attention, sentient units," Talcon interjected, his voice cutting through the tension. "I have detected an unusual energy signature emanating from Bay 4. It is unlike anything in the station's records." "Terrific," Althea sighed, tapping a few more keys. "Guess we're in for a surprise." "Will it be a nice surprise?" Prentice asked hopefully. "Like finding a live grenade in your cereal box," Althea shot back, her eyes glued to the readouts. "Ah, the breakfast of champions," Prentice quipped, though his laughter was more nervous than genuine. As they worked, the station shuddered again, a deep rumble that vibrated through the floors and up into their bones. Althea's teeth clicked together with the force of it, but she kept her focus, refusing to let the cosmos win this round. "All right, Talcon, I need you to run a diagnostic on the stabilizers," Althea ordered. "Prentice, see if you can isolate that energy signature. I'll try to keep this hunk of junk from blowing us all to hell." The team scattered to their tasks, the air buzzing with tension and the faint scent of ozone. Althea's fingers flew over the keys, a flurry of motion that seemed almost magical in its precision. She could feel the familiar pull of adrenaline sharpening her senses, the thrill of a challenge that defied logic and reason. "Hey, Althea," Prentice called, squinting at his screen. "You might want to see this." She joined him, eyes narrowing as she took in the data. The readings were erratic, but one thing was clear. The energy signature matched nothing in their logs, a ghost in the machine that defied explanation. "Looks like we've got company," she muttered, a chill running down her spine. "And not the friendly kind." Talcon drifted over, his eyes scanning the data with the calm detachment of someone who'd seen it all before. "The energy signature is consistent with advanced cloaking technology," he said, frowning slightly. "Possibly extraterrestrial in origin." "Of course it is," Althea huffed. "Because nothing says Tuesday like an alien UFO crash landing in our backyard." Prentice swallowed, his hands shaking ever so slightly. "What do we do?" We keep digging, Althea said firmly. Whatever this is, it's not going away on its own. Their investigation uncovered more questions than answers, each new discovery a tantalizing piece of a puzzle they couldn't quite grasp. The interference seemed to warp the fabric of space itself, a ripple effect that threatened to unravel the station's delicate balance. Whoever's behind this, they've got access to tech that makes us look like cavemen banging rocks together, Althea observed, rubbing a hand over her eyes. And their intentions? Talcon asked, his gaze steady. Probably not a surprise party, Althea said dryly. Unless it's the kind where they surprise us with death. Could be worse, Prentice ventured, attempting a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. At least we're not alone in this. Yeah, nothing like having front row seats to the end of the world, Althea replied, her voice an odd mix of sarcasm and resignation. With each passing hour, the situation grew more precarious. The hub was a ticking time bomb, the threat of catastrophe looming ever closer. Althea worked with the single-minded determination of someone who refused to be bested by a bunch of circuits and wires. Talcon, how's that diagnostic coming? She called, glancing over her shoulder. The stabilizers are operating at minimal efficiency, Talcon reported. But the interference remains a significant obstacle. Figures. Can't ever have something go smoothly, can we? Althea muttered, returning to her task. Prentice shuffled closer, his expression a mixture of fear and admiration. You're really something, you know that? Yeah, a regular miracle worker, she replied, a wry smile tugging at her lips. Now shut up and help me save our asses. Together, they tackled the problem with all the finesse of a demolition crew, their efforts focused on keeping the hub from descending into chaos. It was a battle against the odds, a struggle to maintain some semblance of control in a universe hell-bent on destruction. As the hours wore on, Althea found herself wondering about the bigger picture. What cosmic forces were at play? Who was pulling the strings, and why did they have it out for Earth? The questions gnawed at her, an itch she couldn't quite scratch. Eventually, they hit a breakthrough. With a few deft keystrokes, Althea managed to stabilize the dimensional field, the hub's erratic behavior calming ever so slightly. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was enough to buy them some time. All right, we're not dead yet, she announced, wiping sweat from her brow. Let's see if we can figure out what the hell is going on. Talcon's expression softened, a hint of approval in his gaze. You are most resourceful, Althea Kincaid. Yeah, well, desperation's a hell of a motivator, she replied, her voice tinged with exhaustion. Prentice let out a sigh of relief, his shoulders sagging. So, what now? Now, Althea said, her eyes glinting with determination, we dig deeper. We find out who's behind this and why. And maybe, just maybe, we stop them from turning Earth into a cosmic punching bag. Sounds like a plan, Prentice agreed, his resolve renewed. As they resumed their work, Althea couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of something monumental. The stakes were higher than ever, the potential consequences almost too vast to comprehend. But she wouldn't back down. Not now, not ever. In the face of uncertainty, with the universe threatening to come apart at the seams, Althea Kincaid knew one thing for sure. She wasn't going down without a fight. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. The teleportation hub groaned like an old man trying to get out of bed after a night of bad decisions. Lights blinked in and out, each more unreliable than Prentice's memory on a good day. The air was thick with the smell of burnt circuitry and desperation. Do you smell that? Althea asked, pinching her nose. Burnt toast? Prentice offered, though his voice quivered with the kind of anxiety usually reserved for tax audits or unexpected parent-teacher meetings. More like the smell of a structural integrity failure, Althea replied, her fingers flying over the console with the urgency of someone trying to disarm a bomb made of rabid weasels. Talcon hovered nearby, his skin shifting through a particularly alarming shade of chartreuse. The interference is amplifying. The energy readings are now suggestive of imminent spatial collapse. Well, that's just fantastic, Althea muttered, her sarcasm cutting through the panic like a vibroblade through cheap metal. It's like the universe took a look at us and said, you know what these guys need? More chaos. Prentice swallowed audibly. What are our chances here, Althea? About as good as a snowball in a supernova, she replied, not missing a beat. The hub shuddered again, more aggressively this time, as if it was trying to evict its occupants via centrifugal force. Althea steadied herself against the console, eyes glued to the swirling madness on the screen. Okay, people, she barked, we've got to stabilize the portal before Bay 4 decides it's had enough of our nonsense and implodes. Prentice looked like he had a question, or maybe he just needed a bathroom break. And if it explodes instead? Then we won't have to worry about filing any more complaints, Althea shot back, not even glancing up. Talcon's eyes scanned the data calmly, like a Zen master contemplating a particularly pointless koan. Increasing the modulation frequency might temporarily mitigate the interference. Or it might turn us into space dust, Prentice pointed out, his pessimism showing its usual flair for timing. Which would be a shame, because I really wanted to see how this season of life ends, Althea said, flipping switches with a determination born of pure spite. As the team worked frantically, the hub was alive with the kind of frenetic energy usually reserved for doomed weddings or particularly ambitious jailbreaks. Althea's hands were a blur, guided by equal parts technical skill and sheer bloody-mindedness. Prentice, keep monitoring those energy signatures, she ordered, her eyes darting from one screen to the next. And Talcon, see if you can tweak the stabilizers before they decide to take a permanent nap. Prentice nodded, though he looked as confident as a cat at a dog show. On it, boss. Talcon moved with purpose, his motions fluid and unhurried, like a man who'd seen the end of the universe and found it mildly disappointing. Adjusting parameters now, the room pulsed with tension, the hum of machinery mingling with the frantic beeping of alarms that seemed to have a flair for the dramatic. Althea swatted at a particularly insistent flashing light, her patience wearing thinner than a bargain bin spacesuit. Why do they always make those things so damn loud? She muttered. It's like they think we won't notice our impending doom without a soundtrack. Prentice, squinting at his screen, suddenly gestured wildly. Althea, the energy signature, it's changing. Changing how? Althea demanded, her focus sharpening to a razor's edge. I think it's adapting. Almost like it's alive? Prentice's voice wavered, uncertainty mingled with the kind of awe usually reserved for religious experiences or particularly good pizza. Great, Althea said, rolling her eyes. As if a malfunctioning teleportation hub wasn't enough, now we've got to deal with sentient energy. What's next? Gonna ask us how we feel about our fathers? Talcon raised a brow, though it was hard to tell if it was curiosity or condescension. If the energy is indeed sentient, it may respond to stimuli in unpredictable ways. In other words, it's like a toddler with a gun, Althea concluded, her humor as dry as a Martian dust storm. The hub trembled again, a shiver that ran through its very bones. Althea felt it in the soles of her boots, a low grumble that promised nothing good. She clenched her jaw and refocused, refusing to let the universe's tantrum distract her. All right, we've got to work faster, she said, urgency sharpening her tone. Prentice, keep that data coming. Talcon, give me everything you've got on these energy fluctuations. Let's show the universe what happens when you push the little guys too far. Their efforts intensified, a frantic dance of technological improvisation and sheer stubborn will. Althea moved like a woman possessed, her determination a palpable force. The hub might have been a mess, but it was their mess, and she'd be damned if she let it fall apart. Althea, I think I've isolated the primary source of the interference, Prentice called, his voice a mix of excitement and fear. About time we caught a break, she replied, hurrying over to his side. Prentice pointed at the screen, his finger tracing a pattern that Althea could almost recognize. It's coming from somewhere deep within Bay 4. Of course it is, she said, rubbing her temples. It's like the universe has a sick sense of humor. Talcon joined them, his expression inscrutable as always. If we can reach the source, we may be able to disable the interference at its core. And how exactly do we do that without getting turned inside out? Prentice asked, his skepticism as thick as a neutron star. Althea considered their options, her mind working through the possibilities with the kind of speed that came from years of dealing with cosmic calamities. We're going to have to improvise. Again. Talcon, see if you can rig up some kind of dampening field. Prentice, you're with me. We're going into Bay 4? Prentice gulped, looking like he'd just been invited to swim with space sharks. Unless you've got a better idea? Althea raised an eyebrow, daring him to challenge her plan. Prentice sighed, his shoulders slumping in defeat. Nope, just the usual blind panic. Good, she said, slapping him on the back. Let's get moving before the place decides to redecorate itself in shades of explosive. The trio moved with purpose, a motley crew of defiance in the face of cosmic absurdity. As they approached Bay 4, the air grew thick with tension, the kind of pressure that could turn carbon into diamonds or hope into despair. Anyone want to place bets on how this ends? Althea quipped, though her smile was more determined than amused. Not much of a betting man, Prentice replied, his voice tight as a drum. Talcon offered a rare flicker of a smile. I find the concept of wagering on one's survival intriguing yet impractical. Spoken like a true alien, Althea said with a snort. Bay 4 loomed ahead, a technological anomaly within an anomaly. The portal shimmered with energy, the interference a chaotic symphony of light and sound that threatened to overwhelm their senses. Let's get this over with, Althea said, steeling herself for whatever came next. They approached the portal with all the caution of someone defusing a bomb while blindfolded. Althea's heart pounded in her chest, a steady rhythm that underscored the chaos around them. Prentice, keep an eye on those readings, she ordered, her voice steady despite the tumult. Working on it, he replied, though his eyes were wide as saucers. Talcon was already at work, his hands a blur as he manipulated the controls with alien precision. The dampening field is stabilizing, but it will not hold indefinitely. Then let's make it count, Althea said, her resolve as solid as the hull they were trying to protect. The interference roared, a beast that refused to be tamed. But Althea and her crew were nothing if not stubborn. They pushed forward, each step a testament to human tenacity in the face of insurmountable odds. Althea, there, Prentice shouted, pointing towards a console that sparked with angry energy. On it, she replied, rushing over with the kind of reckless abandon that had gotten her into trouble more than once. As she worked, the universe seemed to hold its breath, the outcome as uncertain as a politician's promise. Althea's hands moved with instinctual precision, guided by a mix of experience and sheer bloody-mindedness. Almost there, she muttered, her focus absolute. The console sparked again, a defiant gesture that promised retribution. But Althea wasn't one to back down. Not now, not ever. Now, Talcon, she called, her voice rising over the din. The alien obliged, activating the dampening field with a flourish that was as subtle as a sledgehammer. The interference faltered, the chaotic energy flickering like a candle in a hurricane. We've got a window, Talcon said, his voice calm despite the urgency. Althea nodded, her heart pounding with the thrill of impending success or failure. Then let's finish this. With a final surge of effort, they pushed through the chaos, their determination a beacon of light in the darkness. The interference shuddered, then collapsed, a dying ember in the void. Is it over? Prentice asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. For now, Althea replied, allowing herself a moment of satisfaction. But we've still got work to do. The hub was stabilizing, the threat of collapse receding like a bad memory. Althea felt a wave of relief wash over her, though she knew better than to relax just yet. Nice work, team, she said, her voice warm with gratitude. Let's get back to the control room before the universe decides to throw another curveball. As they made their way back, the hum of the hub was a comforting presence, a reminder that they were still in the fight. Althea glanced at her crew, her heart swelling with pride for their resilience and determination. In the face of adversity, they'd held their ground. And while the universe had more tricks up its sleeve, Althea Kincaid and her team were ready to face them all. The teleportation hub had quieted down to a tense murmur, like the uneasy silence before an execution. Althea, Prentice, and Talcon basked in the brief respite, their collective exhaustion palpable. But as always in the universe's twisted sense of humor, the calm was only the eye of the storm. Does anyone else feel like we're about to be the punchline to a cosmic joke? Althea asked, wiping sweat off her brow with the back of her hand. Her console, now more of a sparking hazard than a tool, lay abandoned. Only if the universe has a really sick sense of humor, Prentice replied, trying to untangle himself from the mess of cables he'd become one with. Talcon, seemingly unfazed by their recent brush with oblivion, was as enigmatic as ever. Given the nature of our predicament, humor might be a necessary coping mechanism. Althea snorted. Yeah, well, I've always found gallows humor comforting. Like a good electric chair. Prentice's screen flickered, an ominous sign that snapped them back to attention. Guys? I think we've got another situation. Does it involve imminent death or just mild dismemberment? Althea asked, sarcasm lacing her words as she peered over his shoulder at the screen. Prentice's hand trembled slightly as he pointed at the data streaming across the screen. Energy spikes. Massive ones. They're coming from outside the hub. Fantastic, Althea muttered. The universe is really outdoing itself today. What's next? Sentient black holes. Talcon observed the data, his skin shifting to a contemplative shade of deep blue. The energy fluctuations suggest a disturbance on a planetary scale. Planetary scale? You mean like Earth deciding it wants a career change? Althea asked, though her tone had lost some of its levity. More like two planets fighting over a lottery ticket, Prentice murmured, trying to make sense of the incomprehensible readings. It's like they're arguing. Arguing? Althea's eyebrows shot up. Planets don't argue, Prentice. They just sit there, being planet Y. Unless these are really special planets. The energy patterns are unusually erratic, Talcon noted. It is possible that there is an element of sentience involved. Great, sentient planets with a grudge match, Althea said, throwing her hands up. As if I didn't have enough on my plate with this hub that's one glitch away from a nervous breakdown. Prentice squinted at the screen, the lines of data dancing like drunken fireflies. If they're sentient, maybe we can talk to them. You know, negotiate peace terms before they turn Earth into a crater. Negotiate? Althea shot him a look that could curdle milk. What are we gonna do? Offer them a nice vacation package? Talcon's skin shimmered a thoughtful green. Communication could be facilitated through manipulating energy wavelengths. However, our current resources are insufficient. Of course they are, Althea sighed. Why wouldn't we be riding into the apocalypse on an empty tank? Prentice frowned, his forehead creased with concentration. If we can't talk to them, what's the backup plan? Pray? Althea suggested. Or maybe offer them Prentice as a sacrificial diplomat. Hey, Prentice protested, his voice a mixture of indignation and a hint of genuine fear. Relax, I'm kidding, Althea said, managing a faint grin. Though your negotiation skills could be handy. I mean, if you can haggle with that vending machine on SETI Prime, you can handle planets, right? Prentice managed a weak smile. Only if they want substandard sandwiches. Althea rubbed her temples, the impending doom of planetary conflict a headache she didn't need. We need a way to boost our communication capabilities. Something that can hit planetary frequencies. Isn't that like asking for a miracle? Prentice asked, his voice tinged with a hopelessness that mirrored the situation. We don't do miracles, Althea shot back. We do duct tape and ingenuity. Talcon's eyes flickered with an idea. There is a possibility. If we can redirect the hub's power, we might amplify our signals enough to reach the planets. Redirect the power? Althea echoed, her mind racing. That's risky. If we miscalculate, the whole place could blow. Prentice nodded, visibly paling at the thought. So, business as usual then? Pretty much, Althea replied, her lips curling into a grim smile. Let's see if we can jury-rig a planetary peace broadcast without blowing ourselves into next week. The trio set to work with a renewed urgency, each action deliberate and precise. The hum of the hub seemed to drum along with their movements, an omnipresent reminder of what was at stake. Prentice, I need you to calculate the power draw and see if we can spare enough juice without shutting down completely, Althea ordered, her hands already flying over the controls. On it, Prentice replied, diving into the data with a focus usually reserved for mid-level panic. Talcon, you're on frequency modulation. See if you can tweak the settings to hit planetary wavelengths, Althea continued, her eyes never leaving the flickering screens. Talcon nodded, his demeanor as calm as ever. Adjusting frequencies. The margin for error is slim. Story of my life, Althea murmured, her concentration absolute. The room felt like a pressure cooker, the atmosphere dense with anticipation and the smell of burnt circuits. Every second stretched endlessly, each click of a button a potential trigger for catastrophe. Althea, we've got a problem, Prentice called suddenly, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. Another one? Really? Althea tossed him a look that was equal parts disbelief and resignation. Yeah, the power grid's not holding. If we push any harder, the whole thing could fry, Prentice reported, his hands gesturing helplessly at the console. Althea's jaw tightened. We don't have a choice, Prentice. We either reach those planets, or we sit back and watch Earth get squashed like a bug under a boot. Prentice swallowed hard, nodding. Understood, boss. Turning on the charm. Talcon, how's that frequency modulation going? Althea asked, turning to her alien companion. Optimizing settings now. We may reach planetary frequency within moments, assuming no further anomalies, Talcon replied, his fingers a blur over the controls. Assuming, huh? That's reassuring, Althea said, her voice carrying the weariness of someone who'd seen one too many things go wrong. The hub vibrated with a new intensity as power surged through its systems. Lights flickered ominously, a disco of disaster waiting to break loose. We're approaching critical output, Prentice warned, his voice rising with the tension. Hold it steady, Althea instructed, her own nerves fraying at the edges. Talcon's voice broke through the noise, his calm demeanor a thin thread of sanity. Frequency alignment achieved. Attempting communication. Do it, Althea said, holding her breath. The room seemed to collectively exhale as Talcon sent out the signal, a desperate plea into the void. For a moment, it was as if the universe paused, waiting to see if this ragtag group of misfits could pull off the impossible. Time stretched, each heartbeat a countdown, every second an eternity. Althea watched the screen, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts and fears. Would they succeed, or was this just another futile attempt to stave off the inevitable? Incoming response, Talcon announced, his voice as even as if he were commenting on the weather. Response? Prentice echoed, disbelief etched across his features. From who? From what appears to be one of the planets, Talcon replied, his skin shifting to an excited yellow. Althea leaned in, her heart pounding. Put it through. Let's see what our planetary pen pal has to say. The hub's speakers crackled to life, a low hum that resonated with potential. At first, it was indistinct, like a radio tuning in on a distant station. Then, slowly, a voice emerged. A voice that was both alien and strangely familiar, a deep, resonant timbre that seemed to vibrate through their very bones. We hear you, it intoned, each word deliberate and ponderous, like a mountain learning to speak. Althea exchanged a look with Prentice and Talcon, a mix of shock and triumph reflected in their eyes. They'd done the impossible. They'd talked to a planet. Who knew interplanetary diplomacy could be so literal? Althea quipped, her voice betraying the relief she felt. Prentice laughed, a short, disbelieving sound. Guess we're in the big leagues now, huh? Talcon's skin deepened to a satisfied green. This is merely the beginning. Effective communication is the first step. Althea nodded, her mind already racing ahead. They'd opened a line of communication, but what came next was anyone's guess. Could they negotiate peace? Or was this just a brief reprieve before the storm? All right. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, Althea cautioned. We might have their ear, but we still need to figure out what they want. Prentice shrugged. Maybe they just want to chat about the weather? Althea chuckled, the absurdity of the situation finally hitting her. Yeah, or maybe they want us to throw in some snacks. Planet-sized snacks. The planet's voice rumbled through the hub again, a sensation more than a sound. We seek balance, it declared. Balance? What does that mean? Prentice asked, his confusion mirroring Althea's. Talcon's eyes narrowed as he processed the information. Balance implies equilibrium. Perhaps the planets are seeking a cessation of conflict. Althea considered this, her mind whirring with possibilities. So, we're mediators in a cosmic sibling rivalry? Fantastic. What's next? Couples therapy for black holes. The hub's machinery hummed in agreement, a steady rhythm that underscored the challenge ahead. Althea felt the weight of it settle on her shoulders, but for the first time, she didn't feel alone. Well, whatever balance means, we'll figure it out, she said with a determination that burned as bright as the stars outside. Because if we can talk to a planet, I'm sure we can figure out how to make peace. Prentice grinned, his earlier anxiety fading into a cautious optimism. Here's hoping. I'd rather not end my days as a planetary snack. Agreed, Talcon said, his voice carrying the hint of a smile. Let us continue this dialogue and discover what resolution is possible. Althea nodded, feeling the familiar surge of adrenaline that came with a new challenge. They were far from out of the woods, but they'd taken the first step. And as long as they kept moving, there was hope. All right, team, she said, her voice strong and steady. Let's get to work. We've got planets to save. With that, they dove back into their tasks, each action a testament to their resolve. The hub shimmered with potential, a beacon of hope in the vast, uncaring void. And for the first time in a long time, Althea Kincaid felt like they might just have a fighting chance. The teleportation hub was a disaster waiting to happen. The air thrummed with the promise of catastrophe, like a nightclub filled with drunks ready to brawl. Althea Kincaid stood in the center of this techno-nightmare, hands on her hips, surveying the chaos around her with the same resignation as a janitor on Monday morning. "All right, everyone," she barked over the din, "let's keep this bucket of bolts from imploding long enough to save our skins." Prentice was neck-deep in cables, his console sparking like it had a personal vendetta against him. "Althea, if the floor doesn't give out under us, I might just marry this console." He grimaced, yanking at a particularly stubborn wire. "Assuming I survive being electrocuted first." Althea shot him a look of exaggerated sympathy. "Oh, Prentice, your love life never fails to depress me." Across the room, Talcon was the picture of unflappable calm, fingers dancing over the controls as if he were playing a concerto, not trying to avert disaster. "Structural integrity dropping to 50%, he announced, more like he was commenting on the weather than impending doom. 50%, huh? Althea muttered. "I've had worse odds at poker." Prentice flashed a strained smile. "Your poker face could scare a black hole, Althea. Flattery will get you nowhere, Prentice. Now keep that power steady." The lights flickered ominously, casting long shadows that danced with the rhythm of the failing machinery. The hub was a symphony of groaning metal and sizzling circuits, a perfect representation of Althea's life, always on the brink of collapse. "Can someone shut those alarms off?" Althea shouted, the blaring klaxons threatening to split her head open. "I'd rather go out from a cosmic explosion than a migraine." Prentice shrugged helplessly, a gesture that his hands had mastered as a survival mechanism. "They're hardwired into the system. Like a bad habit you can't quit." A loud crash echoed from the corridor, making everyone jump. A maintenance bot, its circuits fried, had smashed into a wall and lay twitching like a dying fish. "Poor bastard," Althea said, "couldn't handle the pressure." Talcon tilted his head, the alien equivalent of a raised eyebrow. "Do your mechanical constructs often suffer emotional breakdowns?" "Only the ones that work here," Althea replied. "Bad influence, I suppose." The hub shuddered again, a reminder that their time was running out. Outside, Earth's defenses were collapsing under the planetary assault, like paper shields against a hurricane. The beautiful blue marble of home was about to become a cosmic pancake. Althea rubbed her temples, the stress knotted tight behind her eyes. "Okay, team, it's crunch time. We need to stabilize the portal and fast. Any bright ideas?" Prentice paused from his console wrestling match, wiping sweat from his brow. "We could try the old, throw everything at it and hope it sticks approach?" "Great, that worked so well with my last relationship," Althea deadpanned. "But sure, why not? We've got nothing left to lose except our lives." Talcon's eyes narrowed as he concentrated on the controls. "I may have a suggestion. If we reroute auxiliary power through the emergency conduits, we might reinforce the structural integrity." Althea considered this, tapping a finger against her lips. "And how likely is it that this won't blow us up?" "Approximately 28% chance of survival," Talcon replied, as if discussing something as trivial as tea. "High-stakes poker it is," Althea sighed. "Okay, Talcon, let's get that power rerouted. Prentice, keep an eye on those energy spikes. Last thing we need is a surprise party from the universe with no warning." "Understood," Prentice said, his fingers typing a frantic rhythm on the console. "But if we're going out, can we at least have some decent music?" "You know the rules," Althea replied. "No music until after we save the world." The hub groaned again, a metallic complaint that seemed to echo their collective fatigue. Althea's hands moved over the controls with the ease of long practice, her mind focused on the immediate crisis. One wrong move and they'd be space dust. "Althea," Prentice called, his voice a tight wire of tension, "energy spike incoming. It's off the charts. Tell me something I don't know," she snapped, fingers flying over the control panel. "Talcon, how's that reroute coming?" "Almost complete," Talcon replied, unflappable as ever. "Prepare for possible fluctuations." "Possible?" Althea muttered, rolling her eyes. "Like saying space is kinda big." The air vibrated with unseen currents, the hub's machinery whining in protest as Talcon finished the reroute. Althea held her breath, anticipation a tight coil in her chest. "Here goes nothing," she whispered, hitting the final command. The hub shuddered violently, lights flickering as the power surged through its systems. Althea braced herself, waiting for the inevitable explosion, but none came. Instead, the vibrations settled into a low hum, a precarious equilibrium achieved by sheer force of will. "Status?" Althea demanded, sweat trickling down her spine. "Structural integrity stabilized at 70%, Talcon reported, his voice calm as a Zen master on vacation. Prentice let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. "We did it. We actually pulled it off." "Don't jinx it," Althea warned, though a faint smile tugged at her lips. "The universe loves a good joke." As if on cue, the hub speakers crackled back to life. "We require adjustment," the planetary voice intoned, each word a seismic shift. Althea groaned. "Of course you do, because saving the planet once just isn't enough." Prentice chuckled, a sound that was half relief and half nerves. "Guess they're the demanding type." Talcon's skin shifted to a bemused lavender. "It appears we must continue our negotiations." Althea nodded, her resolve hardening like reinforced steel. They'd bought themselves a little more time, but the clock was still ticking down to destruction. "Well then," she said, her voice laced with determination, "let's get to it. We've got planets to appease and not a lot of time to do it." With renewed energy, they returned to their tasks. The hub, battered and bruised, thrummed with potential as they worked against the clock. Althea felt the familiar rush of adrenaline, her mind a whirl of calculations and contingencies. They weren't out of the woods yet, far from it. But they were still standing, and as long as they had breath in their lungs, they had a fighting chance. "Okay, team," Althea called, determination burning in her eyes. "Let's give these planets what they want and keep Earth in one piece." Prentice nodded, his usual sarcasm tempered by the gravity of their situation. "You got it, boss. Let's show these celestial bodies who's boss." The hub was theirs to command, a testament to human ingenuity and stubbornness in the face of the cosmos. Althea knew the road ahead was fraught with danger, but she wouldn't have it any other way. In a universe that rarely gave second chances, they were determined to earn theirs. And as the hub thrummed with life, a beacon in the vast, uncaring void, Althea allowed herself a moment of hope. They were far from finished, but they were still fighting. And sometimes, that was enough. Althea Kincaid stood in the midst of chaos, her expression the grim determination of someone who had just been told that the universe was out of coffee. Again, it was a look she'd grown accustomed to wearing. The teleportation hub, her pride and joy, was in the throes of yet another existential crisis. Structural integrity was holding by a thread, and if threads could scream, this one would be wailing like a banshee on a bad day. Prentice was still wrestling with the console, a sparking beast that seemed determined to take his eyebrows as trophies. "You know, if this console was a child, it'd be the kind you leave in daycare forever," he quipped, yanking at more wires. "Just don't let it bite you," Althea replied, not missing a beat. "I don't want to fill out the paperwork." Talcon, ever the stoic alien amidst human absurdity, was tapping away at the controls with the finesse of a cat burglar. "Structural integrity is holding," he noted, as if it were the most natural thing in the world for a giant metal box in space to shake like a leaf in a hurricane. "Good," Althea nodded, "because we're about to make it a little worse. Time to bring out the big guns." Prentice glanced up, mock fear in his eyes. "You mean the plan where we try not to die? Or the even crazier one?" "The crazy one, obviously," Althea replied, with the kind of confidence that suggested she'd been through worse. She hadn't, but nobody needed to know that. "I found something in the archive that might just save our sorry asses." Talcon's interest was piqued, which for him meant a slight raise of an eyebrow. "A forgotten technology?" "Sort of," Althea said, beckoning them closer to a dusty screen she'd uncovered in a corner of the hub. "Meet Project Lazarus, our last-ditch effort. It's supposed to stabilize wormholes using a resonance field." Prentice squinted at the archaic schematics. "Looks like something my grandfather would have considered cutting edge. You sure it won't just blow us up faster?" "Probably, but what's life without a little risk?" Althea grinned, dark humor her only shield against the creeping despair. "Anyway, it's not like we have a whole lot of options." Either this works, or we end up as a cautionary tale for future generations. If there are any. Talcon gave a slow nod, the kind that suggested he was weighing the pros and cons of having agreed to join this ragtag team of lunatics. We will require significant energy for the resonance field. Already thought of that, Althea said, her fingers flying over the keyboard with renewed vigor. We can divert power from the auxiliary generators. It'll drain everything, but who needs lights when you're dead? Prentice chuckled, a sound that always seemed to lighten the oppressive air of impending doom. I always knew you were a glass-half-full kind of gal. More like a glass smashed on the floor, Althea shot back, her hands never pausing. Now get moving. We've got a universe to save, and I'd like to live long enough to retire somewhere warm and tropical. As they worked, the hub hummed with activity, a chaotic symphony of beeping consoles and clattering keyboards. The three of them were a team in the trenches, fighting with every ounce of their ingenuity to keep the cosmos from swallowing them whole. Althea, Talcon's calm voice interrupted her thoughts. Are you certain this will work? Nope, she replied, her eyes never leaving the screen. But it's the best shot we've got. Besides, what's the worst that could happen? Prentice snorted. Well, we could implode, explode, get sucked into a black hole, the list goes on. But I guess that's just part of the job description. Exactly, Althea grinned, adrenaline surging through her veins. Now, let's see if we can convince the universe to play nice for once. With the plan in place, they moved with a purpose, a well-oiled machine despite the chaos swirling around them. Althea initiated the power diversion, her fingers dancing over the control panel like a virtuoso. Auxiliary power rerouted, she announced, the lights dimming ominously for a moment before stabilizing. Let's fire this thing up. Talcon adjusted the field parameters, his movements precise and unhurried. Resonance field is online. Preparing to engage. Here goes nothing, Prentice muttered, his eyes locked on the energy readings. If this works, I'll buy everyone drinks. If it doesn't, well, I guess it's been nice knowing you all. The resonance field pulsed to life, a low thrum that vibrated through the hub like the heartbeat of some ancient beast. Althea watched the screens, her heart in her throat, as the energy readings began to stabilize. It's holding, Talcon reported, his voice betraying a hint of surprise. Of course it is, Althea said, with a bravado that masked her own disbelief. Never doubted it for a second. As the resonance field settled into a steady rhythm, the chaotic energy spikes began to subside, their erratic patterns smoothing into a more predictable dance. Althea let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding, relief washing over her like a cool breeze. We did it, Prentice said, his voice a mixture of awe and exhaustion. We actually did it. Don't jinx it, Althea warned, though a genuine smile tugged at her lips. It was a rare occurrence, and Prentice looked like he was about to comment on it before wisely deciding against it. Talcon's skin shifted to a calm blue, the alien equivalent of a smile. The wormhole is stabilizing. We have bought ourselves more time. Not just time, Althea corrected, her eyes alight with determination. We've bought ourselves options. Now we can try something really crazy. Crazier than this? Prentice asked, a hint of amusement in his voice. Do tell. Althea turned to face them, her expression fierce. We're going to contact the planets directly. It's time they hear from us personally. Prentice blinked, caught off guard. You mean, talk to them? Like negotiate? Exactly, she nodded. We've been reacting this whole time. It's time we take the initiative. Show them that humans aren't just targets to be squashed. Talcon considered this, his alien mind processing the implications. This could provoke them further. Or it could make them realize we're willing to fight for our survival, Althea countered. Either way, it beats sitting here waiting for them to make the next move. Prentice rubbed his chin thoughtfully. All right, boss, you've got my vote. Let's go have a chat with the big boys. With their course set, Althea and her team set about preparing for the most important conversation of their lives. The hub was a flurry of activity, each of them laser-focused on their tasks, the banter giving way to silent determination. Talcon, you're on translation duty, Althea instructed, her mind racing with possibilities. We need to make sure they understand exactly what we're saying. Understood, he replied, his calm demeanor somehow reassuring amidst the chaos. Prentice was working furiously on his console, the sparks now subdued to a manageable flicker. I'm patching us through to their communication grid. We'll be live in 3, 2. Althea took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. All right, people, let's show them what we're made of. The screen flickered to life, revealing a vast expanse of stars and shadowy planets. Althea's heart pounded in her chest as she stepped forward, determination etched into every line of her face. This is Althea Kincaid, speaking on behalf of Earth, she began, her voice steady and strong. We've stabilized the wormhole, and we're not backing down. We're here to negotiate. Silence stretched across the vast distance of space, the stars twinkling like silent witnesses to their audacity. Althea stood her ground, unwavering as she waited for a response. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, a voice crackled through the speakers, alien yet unmistakably curious. You challenge us? Not a challenge, Althea clarified, her eyes blazing with defiance. An invitation. Let's find a way to coexist. We're not just survivors. We're innovators. And we're not going anywhere. The silence that followed was different, more thoughtful, as if the very cosmos were considering her words. Althea held her breath, hoping against hope that they'd managed to reach through the void and touch something in the hearts of their adversaries. Prentice leaned closer, his eyes wide with disbelief. They're responding. Althea allowed herself a small smile, her heart swelling with a mixture of relief and pride. They weren't out of the woods yet, not by a long shot. But they'd taken the first step, and in a universe that seemed intent on crushing them, that was no small feat. As the conversation continued, the hub thrummed with a new energy, one born of hope and determination. They were still standing, still fighting, and for the first time in a long time, Althea believed they might just prevail. All right, team, she said, her voice filled with renewed determination. Let's keep this going. We've got worlds to save. And with that, they plunged back into the fray, each of them driven by a singular purpose: to defy the odds and prove that humanity was more than the universe had bargained for. Althea stared at the endless expanse of stars on the screen, feeling like she was about to negotiate with a cosmic landlord who'd just discovered she'd been throwing wild parties in their pristine universe. Of course, in this scenario, the landlord was an alien intelligence with the power to flick Earth off the map like a particularly unwanted booger. Here goes everything, she muttered. Prentice, still fiddling with his console, glanced over. Remember, Althea, try not to piss them off. If you can help it. I'll try to keep my middle finger in check, she replied, rolling her eyes. But no promises. Talcon, who seemed unfazed by the unfolding drama, stood by her side, his skin shifting to a thoughtful green. Remember, communication is key. A single misunderstanding could. Well, you know. Yeah, end of the world and all that, Althea grumbled. Let's just hope these sentient planets are in the mood for a chat and not a demolition derby. On the screen, swirling patterns of light signified the presence of the sentient planets. They seemed to pulse in a sequence that felt eerily like breath, if stars could breathe, that is. The alien voice crackled again, a gravelly tone that hinted at an intelligence old enough to have seen planets come and go like passing trends. You wish to negotiate, human? Negotiate, plead, beg, whatever works, Althea said, trying her best not to sound too desperate. Look, we know we've been a bit of a thorn in your orbit. But we're good for it, really. What if we can offer something useful? Something you haven't considered? The energy patterns on the screen flickered, like they were pondering her offer. Althea held her breath, silently praying that the cosmos was in a forgiving mood today. What do you propose? The voice rumbled, a mix of curiosity and caution. Althea exchanged a quick look with Talcon and Prentice. All right, guys, she muttered under her breath, time to sell ice to Eskimos. We propose a partnership, she continued, addressing the celestial entities. We've developed something, Project Lazarus. It can stabilize wormholes, which could be pretty handy for a universe that seems to love a good cosmic hiccup. A pause followed, heavy with the weight of 1,000 potential obliterations. Then the alien voice spoke again, slower, like it was considering each word. Your technology is intriguing. Prentice chuckled nervously. Intriguing is good, right? Not. We're about to get crushed into stardust. Intriguing? Shut up, Prentice, Althea hissed, though she couldn't help but smirk. Yes, intriguing. And we'd be willing to share it, for a little peace and quiet. No more trying to squish us, and we help keep the universe tidy. Talcon stepped in, his voice calm and measured. Humanity has much to offer, despite our abrasive tendencies. We seek to coexist, to contribute. The alien presence seemed to shift in the silence, a thoughtful pause before it replied. There is wisdom in cooperation. But why should we trust you, human? Because, Althea said, a wry smile curling her lips, we're stubborn bastards who refuse to die quietly. And because we genuinely believe every problem has a solution, even if that solution sometimes involves duct tape and a lot of swearing. The planets pulsed again, a rhythm that was slowly becoming familiar. Perhaps there is merit in your resilience. Begin your demonstration. Prentice snapped his fingers, as if he just solved a particularly tricky puzzle. All right, showtime, folks. Let's not screw this up. With a nod, Althea turned back to her console, her fingers flying across the controls. Talcon, you're up. Let's give them a taste of human ingenuity. Talcon adjusted the resonance parameters on the console, each movement methodical and precise. If this works, we may just have a chance. If not, at least we'll go out in style, Prentice quipped, his fingers crossed for luck. The resonance field shimmered into existence on the screen, a delicate web of energy that danced around the wormhole's edges, calming its chaotic fluctuations. It was like watching a storm settle under the delicate touch of a master weaver. See that? Althea pointed, her voice filled with pride. That's our gift, stability, in a universe that sorely lacks it. The reaction was immediate. The energy patterns intensified, a tangible ripple of acknowledgement. Impressive, human. Perhaps there is more to you than we first perceived. Althea allowed herself a small sigh of relief. So, we have a deal? We help keep things stable, and you let us keep existing? Agreed. But know this. Should you falter, our patience is not infinite. Neither is ours, Althea shot back, a hint of defiance in her tone. But we'll do our best. Because honestly, we're pretty fond of this little rock we call home. Prentice let out a low whistle. I can't believe it. We might actually not get vaporized today. Talcon's skin shifted to a serene blue, a rare show of contentment. It seems, for now, we have achieved what many believed impossible. Althea leaned back in her chair, exhaustion finally catching up with her. But beneath it all was a sense of triumph, a victory against all odds. All right, team, we did it. We actually did it. Prentice grinned wide enough to crack his face. I guess this calls for a celebration. If we survive the day, first round's on me. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, Althea said, though a genuine smile tugged at her lips. We've still got a universe to keep from falling apart. True, Prentice conceded, but for now, I'm going to enjoy the fact that we're still breathing. They'd managed to pull it off. Against the backdrop of a universe that seemed hell-bent on chaos, they'd found a way to negotiate peace. It wasn't perfect, nothing ever was, but it was a start, and that was more than they'd dared hope for. Here's to being the universe's most stubborn tenants. Althea raised an imaginary glass, the weight of their achievement settling on her shoulders like a well-earned mantle. To humanity, Talcon echoed, the words strange yet fitting in his mouth. And so they stood, a ragtag crew in an endless void, brought together by the sheer force of determination and a refusal to go quietly into the night. In the grand scheme of things, they were just a blip on the radar, a tiny speck in a cosmos that had seen it all. But standing together, with their hearts full of hope and defiance, they felt like giants. And in that moment, they knew they'd made their mark on the universe. The teleportation hub felt like the universe's most extravagant malfunctioning blender, humming and buzzing with energy it was never designed to handle. Bay 4, a gloriously unreliable section of the hub, was behaving for the moment, which was as close to a miracle as Althea Kincaid had ever witnessed. Of course, she knew better than to trust miracles, especially ones powered by tech that liked to implode when you turned your back. Well, Althea muttered, surveying the controlled chaos around her, at least we haven't exploded yet. That's something. Prentice snorted from his spot at the console, his fingers still dancing over buttons like a concert pianist on a bad day. Give it time. This place has a knack for dramatic exits. Speaking of dramatic exits, how's our favorite cosmic landlords doing? Althea asked, nodding at the swirling lights on the screen that represented the sentient planets. Playing nice for now, Prentice replied, though his voice was laced with skepticism. But I'd keep your running shoes handy. Just in case. Talcon's skin shifted to a contemplative turquoise as he studied the energy patterns. Their curiosity is piqued, which is promising. Yet, their patience will not extend indefinitely. Yeah, well, Althea said, crossing her arms, I'm not planning on overstaying our welcome. We got what we wanted, a temporary truce. Now we've just got to make sure the universe doesn't change its mind and decide we're more trouble than we're worth. Outside the hub, Earth was licking its wounds. The alien presence had left its mark, and humanity was scrambling to pick up the pieces, an activity they were unfortunately well practiced at. Cities were rebuilding, governments were stabilizing, and somewhere, someone was probably trying to sell commemorative, I survived the alien negotiation and all I got was this lousy t-shirt, merchandise. You know, Prentice said, his tone casual as if discussing the weather instead of potential planetary obliteration. This whole ordeal's shown me just how much humans can screw things up and still somehow come out the other side. Althea chuckled, though there was little humor in it. It's a talent, really. Ask any chaos-loving species, and they'll tell you we're top of the class. Talcon nodded thoughtfully. Indeed, your resilience is admirable, if occasionally self-destructive. Flattery will get you nowhere, Althea quipped, but she appreciated the sentiment. It was true. Humanity had an uncanny knack for resilience, even if it often involved making the same mistakes twice. Or thrice, just to be sure. Still, the truce was a win in their column, even if it felt more like a temporary stay of execution. The alien intelligence had agreed not to squash Earth like a bug under a particularly disinterested thumb. In return, humanity would lend its stabilizing tech to keep the universe from folding in on itself like a cosmic accordion. So, what's next? Prentice asked, leaning back in his chair with the air of someone who'd just run a marathon only to find out there was another one starting immediately after. Now, we rebuild, Althea said, her voice carrying the weight of someone who knew the battle was far from over. And maybe, just maybe, we figure out how to play nice with our new extraterrestrial neighbors without getting vaporized. No pressure, Prentice replied, his trademark sarcasm intact. Just humanity's continued existence hanging in the balance. Exactly, Althea said, managing a small smile. But hey, if we can survive Bay 4's shenanigans, we can survive anything. Talcon's skin shifted to a reassuring green, a sign of his confidence in their ability to navigate the turbulent waters of cosmic diplomacy. We have made progress today. It's more than many believed possible. Yeah, Althea agreed, her gaze drifting back to the screen and the sentient planets that lingered there like curious stars. I guess we have. In the aftermath of the negotiation, Althea found herself reflecting on the madness of it all. Here they were, a group of misfits on a glorified space station, playing chicken with forces that could snuff them out with a flick of a celestial wrist. Yet, in the chaos, they'd managed to carve out a sliver of hope, a path forward in a universe that seemed dead set against them. Funny how the universe works, Althea mused aloud, her eyes scanning the bustling activity around her. Just when you think it's about to chew you up and spit you out, it throws you a lifeline. A frayed, barely holding together lifeline, but a lifeline nonetheless. Prentice looked up from the console, a smirk playing on his lips. Yeah, well, it helps when you threaten the universe with your worst-case scenario plans. Nothing scares cosmic entities like the thought of humans with duct tape and determination. True, Althea said with a chuckle. Nothing says, desperate, like a species willing to cobble together a solution out of sheer stubbornness. As the hours passed, the hub settled into a rhythm that felt almost normal, if a place known for its unpredictable implosions could ever be normal. The hum of machinery, the chatter of voices, the occasional spark from an overworked console, it was all part of the daily grind in a universe that refused to stand still. Althea felt a sense of pride swell within her, tempered by the knowledge that this was just the beginning. They'd survived the day, but tomorrow held no guarantees. The alien intelligence was a reminder that the universe was vast, filled with entities far older and wiser than humanity. A fact that could be both comforting and terrifying. Here's to being the scrappy underdogs, Althea said, raising an imaginary glass in a toast to her team. May we continue to surprise ourselves. And confuse the hell out of the rest of the universe, Prentice added, clinking his imaginary glass against hers. Talcon nodded, his skin a vibrant blue of contentment. Indeed, let us continue to prove that even in the darkest corners of space, there is a light that refuses to be extinguished. In the days that followed, Earth focused on rebuilding. The teleportation hub became a symbol of resilience, a testament to humanity's refusal to go quietly into the night. Althea watched as engineers worked tirelessly to reinforce the hub's structural integrity, a task that required equal parts ingenuity and sweat. Bay 4, in particular, was given a much-needed overhaul, though Althea suspected it would always retain its penchant for the dramatic. After all, what was life without a little unpredictability? "How's it looking?" Althea asked Prentice as he examined the newly reinforced panels. "Sturdier than a politician's promise," he replied, wiping sweat from his brow. "But don't worry, I'm sure it'll find new ways to keep us on our toes." "Wouldn't expect anything less," Althea said, her tone light but her eyes serious. "We've been given a second chance, and I'll be damned if we waste it." And so, they forged ahead, driven by a shared purpose and a determination to prove that humanity was more than the sum of its flaws. The path to cooperation with their new cosmic allies would be fraught with challenges, but Althea knew they were up to the task. As she stood on the observation deck, gazing out at the stars that stretched endlessly across the void, Althea felt a sense of peace that had eluded her for so long. The universe was vast and unpredictable, but it was also filled with possibilities they were now free to explore. "Here's to the future," she whispered to the stars, her voice filled with the hope and defiance that had carried them this far. The universe had thrown everything it had at them, and yet, against all odds, they stood together, humanity's most stubborn tenants, unwilling to be evicted from their cosmic corner. "To the future," Prentice echoed, joining her at the window. "Let's make it a good one." With a nod, Althea turned away from the stars and back to her team, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The universe was unpredictable, but so were they, a fact that gave her no small amount of comfort. Together, they would navigate the turbulent waters of interstellar diplomacy, forging alliances and proving that humanity, for all its faults, was a force to be reckoned with. The future was uncertain, but it was theirs to shape, and Althea knew they wouldn't go down without a fight. "Let's get to work," she said, leading her team into the fray once more. After all, they'd made their mark on the universe, and there was no going back now.